All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Alchemy Podcast. I'm with a guest here where I myself also have a ton of questions for. Rebecca Devine, welcome to the Alchemy Podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So, interesting about us is you are a little bit further along in your journey, but we have the same brain cancer diagnosis. And I'm still really fresh in it. I'm only like a month into my diagnosis, where you have
oh my gosh,
many years ahead of me. And so I'm excited to learn from you in this conversation as well. And I'm just so grateful to know that people like you exist in the world too, because when I first got diagnosed, it was really scary. And I'm sure it was for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I want to start, before we get into our diagnosis, you actually, as I was kind of learning about you, your mom actually was diagnosed first. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and that experience and what her diagnosis was?
Absolutely. I think it's one of those blessings in disguise. It was the worst time of my life when my mom got diagnosed. I had never heard of glioblastoma. My mom was vibrant, healthy, 50 years old. She was out riding horses, living her very busy, active life. So many things going on. And she had a seizure in the grocery store. They thought it was a stroke, and came to find out that it was a seizure caused by a brain tumor. And she had glioblastoma. And it was horrible. It was the absolute worst thing that's ever happened to me and my siblings. We lost our mom, who she was, long before we lost her, because, as we know, it's in the brain, and depending where in the brain you get this tumor, it can affect you differently. And it was really bad.
Where was hers located?
Her left temporal lobe.
Yeah.
So yeah, she struggled with being able to speak, to be able to articulate her thoughts. Then it went, grew quickly. So then she lost her ability to really even be able to recognize us, and within weeks or months. So it was very different experience than mine, but why I think of it now as, she's my guardian angel, because when I was diagnosed, I knew exactly what it was, and I knew exactly what I was not going to do.
Were there symptoms for your mom before the seizure? Could you tell personality issues, or was it kind of like a one-time?
Yeah, it was a one-time fluke thing. The only thing that I think about now, and it was 22 years ago, so I don't know for sure, is she had gotten in a horrible car accident a couple of years before and had a concussion. And the symptoms, looking back, reminded me of the symptoms from when she had the concussion. And she would lose words, and so it was it's interesting. And there are some studies showing that brain injury, CTE, can, not cause glioblastoma, but maybe that space is a little bit more susceptible. So I wonder if it, the damage was there and that's where it occurred. I'm not sure. I mean, we also have a genetic link. So there are a lot of things at play. I'm not saying if you have CTE, you're going to get GBM. I want to put that out there, but there is some correlation. So that's the only thing that I remember a little bit, but no personality changes or anything like that.
Yeah. So I know I can relate to, I lost my dad in 2011 to colon cancer.
Okay.
So going with having the experience of a parent being diagnosed with, a terminal ill cancer, it's life-changing. And, when I look back at my dad's cancer, I have some regrets of not asking him questions that I wanted to ask him, not expressing how I was feeling. In my house, at least, I was in my early 20s, we didn't really talk about death. We didn't talk about the experience. We kind of tried to hide it. And it's like, don't talk about it, because if you talk about it, then it's real, then it's going to happen. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what was the conversations like with your mom when she was diagnosed with glioblastoma? What was the relationship in your house?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about that. She was diagnosed 2 days before Thanksgiving, at the grocery store shopping for Thanksgiving dinner that she was going to be hosting, and 2 weeks before my wedding to my now ex-husband, but my kid's dad. I have 4 kids. We had a lot going on, and everything happened really quickly. And one of the things that I think about the most is, I was really a strong advocate. I wanted her to attack. I wanted her to do, this is before the internet, right? I mean, there was dial-up AOL, but this wasn't like, you could Google things, you could look stuff up. This was, back in 2002. So, but I was getting books. I was like, we're going to fight this thing. And also, in the middle of wedding planning, do we cancel the wedding? What do we do? And I remember at one point I was alone with her surgeon, her neurosurgeon, and he was, sometimes, as we know, these brilliant, brilliant surgeons don't have the best bedside manner. But he was alone with me, and I said, listen, we're going to reschedule the wedding. We're going to push it back. And he goes, I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, why? And he goes, if you want your mom at your wedding, keep your wedding the day it is. And it was, I get goosebumps thinking about it, but it was ultimately wonderful advice because we lost so much of her within weeks. And she was there to see all the people, right? Everyone in our lives that was special to us at that time. But it just felt like kind of a whirlwind. And so there wasn't a lot of processing. It was a lot going on all at once. And then all of a sudden, it was like she wasn't really there. So I felt like I stepped into the role of taking care of my dad to some degree. Not that he wasn't, but they ran their own business. So he was doing all of that. He was doing the medical, the billing. I took care of my mom by day, was a caregiver for her. And then I kind of helped take care of the house and take care of my dad's like bookkeeping and stuff with the business. And so it was just busy, which I tend to like to do instead of being just stressed. I just get busy. But to your point, there wasn't a lot of talking about our feelings.
Yeah, and what's that experience like, when you really, because I can relate to that too. When my dad got really, really sick, I moved back home. I was in college and I kind of felt like I had to step into this role. And it matured me really fast. I grew up really fast. Yeah. I'm curious, what was that perspective from you from going from role of daughter to kind of switching roles of being the caregiver? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think to some degree, I'm the oldest granddaughter, oldest daughter. So I always was kind of in that role. It was sort of expected of me, or at least I felt it was expected of me that I was going to be the one to step in and take care of things. So I don't know if it made me grow up really fast, to be honest. I always played that role in our family. But to go from being the daughter to the caretaker emotionally, to who's the person I'm going to ask when I don't know what to do? My mom. So there was just there was nothing. I think for me too, the emotional impact was so strong. I had 4 grandparents still living. I had never been to a funeral. I mean, this was not something that I was in any way prepared for.
Yeah. And, as I go through my experience with my diagnosis, it feels really clear to me that it's important to talk about death. There's so many stories of how old were you when this all happened?
27.
Yeah, so you were 27 years old and you haven't been to a funeral, and it's like we don't talk about it and we don't bring it to the table. But the reality is we're all going to die. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's delayed as long as possible and we can maximize our life. But it seems like our society, and I don't know if you experienced that, and I know you mentioned you're in Minnesota, but it feels like our society, we tiptoe around this conversation. And it's like we try and hide it behind the curtain and pretend that it's okay and that, so I actually admire, your neurosurgeon, giving you that advice to keep your wedding, because that's some hard realities. And so I'm curious, having had that experience with your mom and now you being diagnosed with glioblastoma yourself, has that changed your perception and the way you think and talk about death more publicly?
Oh, 100%. I feel, I mean, my podcast, like the subtitle is Cancer Saved My Life, right? I 100% would not go back to before getting diagnosed with cancer. Absolutely not. I think life is so much better now in so many ways. But one of the ways is I lived in fear of cancer when my mom got cancer. I think I was probably a high-functioning, anxious person. I mean, I don't know if there were diagnoses back then. I don't know if I would have been diagnosed, but I was a perfectionist, straight A student, ran everything, did everything. And I worried like crazy about getting cancer. So much. Worried about death, worried about all kinds of things.
Yeah, what did that look like? Because there's this fear of cancer. And I'm at the point in my diagnosis too where I'm like reading every label is like, I mean, I'm in this phase where I'm like, is there toxins in my mattress that are causing it? Like, and so I'm feeling a little like almost OCD, right? So when you were in that fear stage, right, mom gets diagnosed with cancer, right? What did that look like on a day-to-day for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it felt like a more of a big overwhelming fear than that. Like I said, it was a different time in 2002. We just didn't have access to all that information. So I didn't think about those kinds of things yet. I do now, of course, but I didn't then. It was more just, yeah, just an emotional fear,
Like
a
this
what if.
impending, oh my gosh, is this going to happen
Yes,
experience? Yeah.
yes, exactly. Or just like, I got pregnant. I was pregnant with my oldest, my firstborn son, at my mom's funeral, and I feel like I raised my 4 kids with a lot of fear, a lot of hypervigilance, a lot of anxiety. I just, for the first time, really in my life, as a young adult and a young mom without a mom to help me, and not really a lot of close people in my life who were having children at that time, just felt like, what if something happens to one of my kids? Like, what if they die? Like, people can die. It happened. It was just very real and raw for the first time, more than just in a movie or and clueless, but it was my first time experiencing that very raw, horrible heartbreak of losing someone forever. And the thought that I could lose my kids was terrifying.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially with kids. I remember after my dad died, I remember there was this initial shock and then life just goes on. I remember thinking that too. I'm like, wait, why is the world not stopped? My dad just died, like why
Right.
isn't everyone stopping, And at 20, when I was in my 20s, I didn't have the tools that I do now to process my emotions. And so I suppressed them. I just kind of shoved them all down. We don't talk about it. I'll kind of keep it all there. Eventually it all blew up for me a couple of years later in a psilocybin journey. But I'm curious for you, is there any tools that you had or used to kind of process your mom's passing at the time?
Yeah, not healthy ones. I got really busy. I mean, I started running a ton. My playlist was always called Running Away, right? Stress clean, uh, go out, make plans, plan one vacation while I'm on vacation, just always being in a place of busy, 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 busy. Like, I don't think it was clear in the moment that that's what I was doing, but it was like, don't sit too long and, don't be still and sit with it. Just do. And I had 3 kids in 3.5 years and ended up then having a 4th. Like, it was easy to be busy.
Yeah, there's
right?
plenty to keep your hands full.
That's how I dealt with it. Not the healthiest way, but that was life at the time.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense too, to keep it busy too, to distract yourself from the unpleasant emotions. Now, it's interesting, it's fascinating from my perspective that you also kind of had your diagnosis, the way you found out about it was all through a seizure, but yours was a little bit more of an intense experience. Want to share a little bit about your seizure experience?
Sure, absolutely.
And how much later was it?
Changed my life. 15 years after my mom.
So what year was it?
2018.
So 2018,
February. Yeah.
Tell us what happened. It was an amazing story.
Yeah. So I was at a yoga sculpt class. That was my thing. And I remember in sculpt class that there's mirrors all the way around the room, and I go hard, right? Like, till I feel like I'm going to be sick. That's kind of the way I operate in life, as you're probably picking up. And I remember kind of going down on my knees at one point and seeing in all the mirrors this, like, that swirly thing that happens when your phone's trying to load, but it's not. I don't remember that thing's called, and it was like everywhere I looked in the mirrors. It was like swirly, rainbow swirling. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh my God, I'm dehydrated. I need to like get some electrolytes in me. Of course, I pushed through the class, got in my car, went right over I had to drop off a rug at a client's. I'm in a home design business. And later he said to me, he was like, I feel so guilty because I knew something was up. And I should have said something.
This is your instructor?
I would ask you, no, this was my client's house where I went after. Yeah. So I went to his house after to drop off this rug, and he was like, I would ask you questions and you wouldn't answer. It was like you were kind of spacing out, but that was after the fact. So I got in my car. I was driving home. I was like, I'm going to go have something to eat, try to feel better. And I was on the phone And I remember the last thing that I said on the phone was, I have to hang up the phone. I just can't even tell if this traffic light is red or if it's green. And that was it. The person on the other end heard nothing after that. And I went unconscious and was on a fairly busy street where people saw me. Thankfully, we're all safe, and went across the wrong way of traffic. And, my foot went off the gas pedal, thankfully, and I went into a snowbank. So one of the moments I've loved living in Minnesota was the day that snowbank saved me from much of a much worse crash. But yeah, I was unconscious and people called the ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital.
Yeah, it could have been much more catastrophic without that snowbank. Yeah. So
exactly right.
What was your next memory after that?
My next memory was waking up in the ambulance, and I remember so much that I guess the EMTs were asking me questions like, "What's your name? What year is it? And do you know who the president is?" And I was just laughing because I was like, "Of course I know all this stuff," and I think they thought I was drunk.
And so, obviously you crushed the test, and so you get into the hospital, and what's kind of the initial thoughts of what happened? Like, what was the doctor saying? Was there a different diagnosis? What was the experience like in the hospital?
The dramatic way that I entered the hospital was probably one of the gifts in all of this, because everything came back normal. Like, CT scan showed nothing. The
CT scan came back nothing.
Nothing, right? All my blood tests were normal. I looked healthy. Everything about me seemed healthy, but they were just like, "This isn't right." And I'm like, "I was just dehydrated. Like, I just passed out, let me go home." And I had plans and I wanted to keep going about my life. And they were like, "No." And then they started doing more tests and more tests. And then they did the MRI with the contrast dye. And that's when they saw it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that experience like for you? And where was your tumor located?
So mine is in the right occipital lobe. So it affects your vision, which makes sense now. And yeah, it's weird. I feel like I've had more of like a spiritual awakening since then, starting in that moment. So it's hard probably for you to believe or for other people to believe. But when I was told, I just felt like the world was lifted off of my shoulders. It was like, oh, this is the way my story is going to go. Okay. And I felt relief. I felt like, okay, this is it. And even my brother was there, my brother Dan, and I remember like at some point everyone cleared out and he came in and like pulled up his chair next to the bed, the hospital bed, and he's like, "Hey, Beck, I don't think you understood what the doctor said. I just want to make sure, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know what he said." And he's like, "You're okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Like, this is my story. It makes sense now."
So fascinating you say that, because I remember when I was in the hospital post brain surgery and I'm laying in bed, and I remember having this overwhelming feeling. I'm like, oh, this is a spiritual upgrade for me. And this is a calling. Like, I'm being called to something bigger than myself right now. And my initial feelings was very similar, sense of relief. And so I'm curious from your perspective, when you saw that tumor, were you like, oh, this is glioblastoma?
Well, as soon as they said there it was a tumor, like I already felt like there was just a knowing. It's just a really calm sense of knowing, like, okay, this is it.
And so I'm assuming, they immediately, just like they did with me, they did. How quick did you go into surgery?
I think it was 2 days before they figured out what was wrong with me. So, but I never left the hospital. So I was there. I think I got there on a Wednesday, and then of course I was home on the next Monday, maybe. There for a couple of days. They do brain surgery and then they send you home. And I had just gotten divorced. My divorce was final in January. I got home this happened in February. The divorce took over a year, so it wasn't like that raw, but just like the reality of, here I am. I have 4 kids and I'm being sent home and with all these pills to take by myself. And my sister did come and help me, and she lives out of the country, and I had lots of friends who helped me, but it's kind of surreal. Like, they do surgery on your brain and just like,
they send you on your way.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you process that? For me, I feel really blessed. I had a lot of support, a lot of family, a lot of friends. I think at one point actually in the hospital, they had to call security on my ICU unit because I had too many friends there and they're being too loud. We were having like a little bit of a party. It was fun. So
Yeah.
I'm curious from your perspective, how did you process, sounds like you're going through a big life event with divorce, you're back home with 4 kids, right? And then it's like, man, brain cancer. How did you handle all that?
Yeah, I think again, I look for all the blessings in it. So the good thing about the divorce was like we had the kids, we lived my ex and I lived like a mile away from each other, and he obviously had all the kids. And I was able to have the kids come over like one at a time for an hour or two because it was a lot. It was hard for my brain to hear a lot of noise. If they were all there at the same time, they were a lot younger then, because it's been 8 years. It was, yeah, it was kind of a blessing because then I got to have all this quality time with them in a way that it was like, I don't have to work. I don't have to do anything else. I just get to be here with this kiddo. And, so it was really kind of special. It created really good relationships. And kind of to your point before, when you were asking about, how we talked about it when my mom got sick, talking about death. And I've been very real with my kids from the beginning. We just talk about everything. And that's the way I've parented, because that's not the way I was raised, kind of borderline Gen X, millennial, depending, which way you look at certain things, of just like, we don't talk about stuff. This is a hard no questions, right? And we just talk about everything in my family.
So talk to us a little bit about when you kind of transition post-surgery, tumors out, they staple your head open, and now you go down the process and the journey of diagnosis and oncologists and treatments and all. I mean, there's a million things going on at that point. So what was that, your transition like? And then you started working with the oncologist. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, mine, the hospital oncologist came in and told me I had 12 to 15 months to live. And I was just like, yeah, you're not going to be my oncologist and you don't know me.
So you were pretty resistant to that. So kind of right off the bat, you're like, no.
Well, I was resistant to anyone telling me what my story was going to be. Yeah, heck no. And I was also then, as soon as I did meet with another local neuro-oncologist, when they told me what the standard of care was, what they were going to do for me, it was exactly what they did for my mom. That did not work. So I was like, yeah, I'm not just signing up for this. I'm going to see what my options are. And I saw 6 neuro-oncologists before I started chemoradiation. I went to Mayo. I went to a few different hospitals in Minneapolis. I flew to Duke. And so I was just, I'm going to figure this out. I mean, I didn't know like for sure that I was going to beat this thing and live for all these years after, of course, but I knew I wasn't going to do standard of care and just like, wait.
I'm so glad you say that, because it blows my mind, because I'm in this process right now.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to do radiation. Data seems clear for me on that. I'm not sold on chemo, because I do want to get into the CGAT too, because I'm cleared to do CGAT, and we'll talk about that. But the thing that blows my mind, to your point, is it breaks my heart that so many people get diagnosed with cancer, all types of cancers, and their oncologist is like, hey, radiation and chemo, and then good luck. And I'm like, there's so many more options out there. Like there's so many clinical trials. There's so much stuff overseas. I'm looking at stuff every single day, and I'm like, I'm a go-getter. Like I make things happen, and I'm, very aggressive in my search and advocating for myself. And it just breaks my heart that there's so many people who just kind of accept their diagnosis and then go home to die after the protocol standard. And so I really, admire that within yourself of just like, no, I'm going to go be assertive on this. And I mean, 8 years into this, seems like it's been working for you. So I want to hear your experience, because I want to talk about CGAT. So for those that don't listen to, CGAT is you actually been there, better than I do, but where they process a cancer vaccine based upon your own DNA from your tumor. And so talk to us about how you found CGAT, what your process was of understanding about the vaccine, what made you decide to do it, and how your experience has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out about the CGAT vaccine, that's what it's commonly known as. So we'll just refer to it as that. At Duke University, what my doctor there.
Is that Friedman?
Friedman's one of the head guys there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've had a conversation with Friedman, and he recommended CGAT as well.
Yeah. So back then, it was really new. 8 years ago, right? 8+ years ago. So they told me about it after I just wasn't qualifying for any of the trials as a newly diagnosed. They kept saying, wait for recurrence, wait for recurrence. I'm like, I'm not waiting
that's
for
where I'm at now. It's like,
recurrence.
it's impossible to get into a clinical trial because they all want regrowth.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like striking out everywhere. Yeah.
It's really hard because they want you to wait. They want you to do standard of care, the 6 weeks concurrent chemo radiation. And then they want you to do, back when I did it, they wanted me to do the 523 chemo, 5 days off, 5 days on, 23 off for a year. Now I think a lot of people are doing it for 6 months, even though my tumor was unmethylated. It's just, that was the standard. That was their gold standard, right? So I would just keep pushing. I kept advocating for myself and being like, no, I am not waiting for recurrence. Like, you got to give me something or I'm going somewhere else. And so they told me about CGAT. They said, but you have to fly to Germany. We don't know if it's going to work. It's going to cost you a ton of money. And, but you can try. And then when I talked to Saskia, Saskia is my hero. I have a rescue dog around here somewhere named Saskia. That I knew right away when I talked to her. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. It makes sense. It makes sense to train your body's own immune system to recognize the enemy, the cancer cells, and fight it so that you can teach your body to fight this for the rest of your life. I mean, that's the end game, right? Like, to cure cancer, to cure it, not to, hope that the poison of chemo kills enough cancer cells without killing you, which I know is the best thing we have. I'm not anti-medicine or even, traditional medicine, but I just know like that the future is so much brighter if we lean into immunotherapy. And when I talked to her, it was like, this is it. I'm going to swing for the fences. So I've shared this before. Everyone knows that if they know anything about me. I took home my 523 chemo and I hid it in my nightstand and I didn't take it. And I don't ever advise people in any way medically, and I'm not going to now. I think everyone has to make their own decision with their own team, and Saskia would say the same thing. But I was like, if I'm banking on my immune system, why am I going to knock out my immune system? They're telling me I'm unlikely to respond. This makes no sense. So in my mind, and I just really trusted my gut on that. I was like, I'm not doing this, and I didn't take it.
Did you do any chemo? Did you do chemo with radiation or did you do zero chemo?
Yeah, I did the chemo with radiation, the low dose for those 6 weeks. And, since I'm alive and well and never had a recurrence and have no deficits and everything else is great, I wouldn't do anything differently, but who knows?
Yeah.
I also did other alternative things, but yeah.
That's where I'm at right now, where in my head, I'm like, man, like, there's a high probability I'm going to do CGAT. They're just waiting for me to wire the money. I've already had all the appointments. They're going to get my tumor. I was kind of looking at potentially at a CAR T trial that I probably won't qualify for. And so in my head, I'm like, man, does it make sense to do the chemo? And so I had a great meeting with my oncologist up at Huntsman Cancer Institute, and he was actually pretty open to it. He's like, yeah, it makes sense if you're trying to do immunotherapy. And so where I'm at now is I think I'll do chemo with radiation, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to do anything after that, right? I'm not going to do.
So you haven't even done that yet?
Radiation starts next week.
Oh my gosh, you're just right in it.
I'm right in it, So this is, for those that are looking, this is the last time. Enjoy this piece of hair right here on my head because it's the last time you're going to see it. And so that's gone next week. So I think it'll look cool. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know if this makes sense to knock out my T cells and my white blood cells, if that's what we're going to be leveraging, in the CGAT trial. It doesn't make sense to knock it out. So I fully agree with you on that. Was that a hard decision for you to make, or was it pretty easy?
It felt scary because everyone was when I brought it up to my team, everyone was like, no, you're going to do the chemo. Obviously, they sent me home with it thinking I was taking it. I didn't even tell them until probably 2 years ago that I never took it. I felt like it was important to share. At first, I was scared. I was like, what if it disqualifies me from something in the future? What if they refuse to treat me? I don't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I just didn't say anything. I just didn't do it. But now I feel like it's important to share that because it's important information. It's important for the neuro-oncologist. It's important for Saskia's team at CGAT to know that I didn't take it.
Yeah, and I think it seems like the evolution from even 8 years ago, the conversation has changed. Because I'm the same way as you. Like I've talked to, I think, 10 oncologists from Duke to UPenn to UCSF to Huntsman to Mayo to, everywhere, right? And I've actually gotten some advice from oncologists, some of these major universities who were both like, you know, if you do chemo for the 6 weeks of radiation and then skip the rest with you planning to do CGAT, that makes sense. Right. And I think that's evolved. I don't think that would have been said 8 years ago.
I don't think so either. So I mean, I'm not saying I'm the only one, but people like me who go back and tell, you know, we have to tell our teams that that's what we did, or they wouldn't even be open to considering it. Right. So I think that's huge. I also did a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting during that period, which I think was a huge piece of my
still doing
survival.
that?
No, I did it for 2 years. My mom's cancer tissue was still at the University of Illinois Chicago Hospital when I called them and asked if they still had it, thinking there's no way they're going to have it. And they did. So Duke tested her tumor tissue and mine and found the genetic link that we both have. And it's the colon cancer gene, Lynch syndrome. And now I know that I'm at really high risk for colon cancer, reproductive cancers, brain cancers, the least likely of this cancer mutation. But knowing that and knowing how I was physically feeling not eating fruits and vegetables for so long and how much I needed my gut microbiome to be so robust to receive and like really be trained to do well with the immunotherapy treatment I was getting, I was like, at some point, I don't think I should do keto anymore. And then I went to a more plant-based, and now I'm more Mediterranean.
Yeah, because that's from that too. So my dad died from colon cancer, right? So in my head, there's, you know, someone else brought this to my attention. I had no idea. They're like, hey, you need to look up Lynch because glioblastoma is tied to colon cancer. And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, all my siblings need to get tested, and I'm freaked out a little bit. But I'm on keto right now too, and trying that out. But that's good information to know, like, you know, as you've evolved and take more information in. So when you initially decided, hey, I'm going to do CGAT, did you have any hesitation or pushback from any of your oncologists about it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course.
What were those conversations like?
You know, you could buy a Mercedes or a BMW with the money that you're going to spend. I'm like, for what if I'm dead? Like, what in the world, right? It was like an eye roll. And I have an appreciation. My neuro-oncologist, who's since retired, who said that, I understand that he's been doing this for, 50 years? And the heartbreak he's gone through and the things that he's seen people go through and what, you know, colored his, what you know, lens he was looking at me through. I understand that. I have compassion for that. I'm not angry about it, but it's kind of funny to think back now. And I love to tell the story about him because he just poo-pooed every idea I had about diet. He thought that was a waste of money, but he was like, hey, I'll still be your neuro-oncologist. I'll do your MRIs. You can do it. But he was just like, I don't think this is going to be a waste of your money. And, you know, this was before the COVID pandemic. So like over COVID, I saw this doctor who, I don't know how old he is, honestly, get a Peloton, get in the best shape of his life, and totally change his thoughts about everything. And I'm not saying, oh, this was all me, but I know that when you do these things and other people see it, it impacts other people, which is why I live out loud, why you're doing this already. And I know that the way he treated patients after me was different than the way he treated me.
So tell us a little bit about what it was like to get the vaccine. I know you had to wait quite a while for your first dose. Seems like they've really shortened that time now. I think it's like 16 weeks now. And I think you waited how long before your first dose?
Yeah, it was 11 months after my diagnosis, but 9 after I finished my SOC. So.
Yeah. When was there fear in that 9 months? Were you like, was that stressful? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I felt like I so believed in it. I had no hesitation about it, but it was like, what am I supposed to do in the meantime, right? I don't want this thing to come back. So I just really leaned into the stuff I could control, which was the ketogenic diet, super clean, super, you know, I tested like crazy. I made sure I did that, worked out like crazy. I mean, I hot yoga, just fitness. So food and fitness were huge. And, you know, really just in mindset, right? Meditation, just being really solid. And no matter what happens, this is my purpose. This is my life. How am I going to help people? How am I going to be the best person I can be while I'm here? So I just worked on those things and they've carried with me, right? And it's still doing all of those things.
Beautiful. So what was it like to get the news that, hey, your vaccine's ready? And what was it like to go over there?
Oh, so exciting. I mean, it was just like, finally, I can't wait. So yeah, it was, and going over there for me, another just odd blessing is the fact that my sister lives in Amsterdam. So, well, Rotterdam, but close. So I could fly, meet her at the airport in Amsterdam. She could go over with me. I got to see her way. I was always like, careful what you wish for. Cause I'd be like, why can't there be a way that I could see my sister more? Next thing you know, every month I get to see my sister, go get a couple vaccines and then come home. So it was that for me, that what like really made it feel a little safer and a little more comforting that she was going with me. But I wish I took more pictures of when I first went there. You would not believe it. Like it, I mean, I hate for like the team to hear this because, they've made this beautiful building since, but it was like, where am I? What in the ET movie am I like walking into? It was so surreal and bizarre.
Did you have
And then
reservations after seeing it?
from the outside, yes. Like I looked at my sister and at my now husband who went with me, and we were like, what is this place? What have we done? And then we walk in, and then we get up into like the actual space. And I don't know if you've ever had to see a doctor in Europe, but it's definitely more like an office setting. It doesn't feel so hospital-like. And there's like this lush, like red couch and like paintings on the wall, and they bring you a cappuccino and they talk to you like a human. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of down with this. Like, this is kind of great. Um, and then, of course you go into a room that's sterile and all the things. But yeah, so I don't know if I would say I had reservations except pulling up and parking. Like that
The initial
moment
shock.
was kind of like, what in the world is this place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell us about the vaccine. Is it one shot? What's the process like of actually getting administered?
Yeah. So they inject first on like the surface level. It's in your abdomen, right in your stomach. And then so what it does is it gets your body like revved up and ready to receive the vaccine. So it swells up like a bee sting. And then your body is like, hyper, I don't even know what the word is
Primed.
anymore. Primed. There we go. Primed and ready to go. So you have like this like strong allergic reaction sort of at the site. So your body is ready and like hyped up, like what are we responding to? And then they inject it into that. So does it feel good? No, but I mean, it's, so you get a shot and then you get a shot into your swelling from the first shot. And yeah. And so now, now I get a different vaccine for Lynch. So I'm going back a lot and they do the 4 every time I go. So the first, when you first go, you'll go and you'll have 4 visits over 10 days. And then after that, you'll go monthly until you start to have a strong response. And then you start talking with the team about, if you should spread the vaccines out a little bit more, because they make one round and that's it, right? With your tumor tissue. And when it's gone, it's gone. So I got really lucky again, because the pandemic shut down travel internationally, which was scary because it was like, again, here I am not doing anything. So I didn't go for 20 months to Germany. I was afraid even if I could go, what if I got stuck there? What if I got sick? What if I couldn't get back to my kids? I don't think I should go. I didn't go, but when I went back to continue getting my vaccine and they drew my blood and tested it with what they call immune monitoring. So they, take it and they test to see how strong your response is going to be. I was still having a really strong response. So my body's, my immune system was still recognizing the cancer cells, the mutation. So I knew then that I could go quite a long time. So I think I did another one maybe in 6 months. And then they're like, let's go 9. And now I go every year. And I still have a couple left.
So how many times have you been in total?
I don't know for sure. I would have to look.
Yeah. So they were telling me that I would go roughly between probably 11 times over a year and a half. But it seems like yours has been more spread out.
Yeah. So initially I went, for those first couple of years from 2019 to 2020. So for like the first 15 months, I went every month, right? Or however, I probably went 12 times and then had the break and then went a couple times, but then I started a second vaccine for Lynch. So that again was like the every month for a while. And now those are spread out as well because I'm having a good response.
So you're on CGAP for glio, and then you're also taking a different vaccine for Lynch.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new process.
a whole new thing.
Yeah, share more about the Lynch process and like what encouraged you to do another vaccine for that. Is that also with CGAT?
It's also a CGAT. Yeah, I knew it was something that they were working on. The thing is, Saskia says it so well. She's like, nobody's going to fund a vaccine like this because there's no proof that it works except that you don't die of pancreatic cancer or you don't die of, one of the cancers that you're prone to. And it could be the vaccine or it could be something else. They still do the immune monitoring, but I was just really like, I didn't make it this far to then have something else kick in. And I really wanted to try it. And I knew that she had created it for a couple of other patients. And so, I got it starting 2 years ago, I think. And yeah, I'm having a really good response to that as well, which will also offer some protection for the glio, but then, the other cancers that I'm at high risk for now.
Wow. And how often do you go in for the Lynch? How often do you go?
So initially it was the same thing with the 4 doses and then the monthly, but now I'm annually with that one too. So I have them synced and I go in January.
And so one thing I really admire about you too is you've taken the very active approach of advocating for yourself, taking a risk. I feel like we're very similar in that mindset of not just like lying down and letting this thing kill you, right? I'm sure you've also had a ton of people reach out to you, right?
Oh, so many.
So many, right? It's obviously once you have glioblastoma, you kind of get connected into the glio world, right? And I'm curious from your perspective, what are some similar insights you share to people who reach out to you as far as messages of hope or encouragement or, what is someone who's recently diagnosed with any type of cancer? What are some insights that you've shared that you think have been helpful as they've been received by others?
I think the most important thing is, yes, to be a beacon of hope. Like you are not your diagnosis, your prognosis is not your fate. You get to tell your own story, right? You get to do this differently. None of us knows how long we're going to be here. I'm not living in denial, but you don't let somebody else tell you how that looks. You get to decide. You still have a voice. You still have a say. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to fight for what you want, even if that means second, third, fourth opinions, even if that means flying across the country or to a different country. The other thing when I counsel people, I do one-on-one coaching as well as my podcast. And when I talk to people often, and I've been there and I understand that, is you have to let go of what you thought your life was going to be. You have to detach from that. None of us knows what our life's going to be, but we all have this idea. I'm going to get married at this age, have a boy, have a girl, do this job, whatever it is, and just let go of it all and just embrace your life for what it is and find the meaning and the purpose and the beauty. And so many people do, so many of us. And as you get more into this and talk to people with glioblastoma diagnoses, you're going to find so many of us love our lives now. We just live with purpose. We kind of weed out all those wasted energy connections and really focus on the people that are the most meaningful. We enjoy things more. It sounds cliche, but it's real. You just appreciate all the little things in life more. And you love your body, right? You love this body and you want to take good care of it and feed it well and you want to exercise, you want to do the most you can. Some of us have really strong limitations, right? Physically, other things, but with what you have, just, living fully and yeah.
I mean, it's so well said and I can resonate so much, even in, I'm so still new in this, but I always say the secondary anxieties have just completely fallen away. Like what's going on in the stock market? Like, I'm single. Like, did the girl text me back? Like, are my love handles too big? I'm like, I just don't care anymore. Like all those things that I thought were so important are just gone. What matters to me is relationships with friends and with family and with God. And it's really changed my perspective. A question I have for you on a personal level is it sounds like when you first got diagnosed, you were going through a divorce and you are now since remarried. Is that correct? So from me in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm never getting married, right? Like I'm single guy. I just got diagnosed with glioblastoma. It's 15-month timeline. Who's going to want to hitch their, horse to me? Like, no, right? So talk to us. What was that process like? Was it someone you knew from your past? Was it a new connection? What was that experience like of getting remarried with glioblastoma?
Let go of that. Someone's for sure going to want you, glioblastoma and all. Yeah, I had, so, the the legal part of the divorce finished in January and I got diagnosed in February, but we had been separated for over a year before that. So was kind of starting to see somebody and then this happened and it was really early in the relationship. And I was like, oh God, this is, I'm a person who doesn't really do well with help. I've gotten a lot better, but like, go away. I don't want you to see me like this. I don't want you to be around me like this. And that he wasn't going to take no for an answer. If anything, it kind of forced a deeper connection from the beginning, right? Because you don't really want someone to see you like that. Like I didn't want you to see me without makeup on back then, right? And you get to see me with my whole head bald and all of the things, like all of the ick right out there from the beginning. But ultimately, I mean, when he proposed to me, I'm like, who proposes to someone with terminal cancer? But now we have our inside jokes about it. I'm always like, you're still stuck with me. You didn't think I was going to be around this long, did you? And it's, yeah.
Beautiful. Sounds like a really amazing, really loving relationship. Sounds like an amazing guy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He's great.
Well, Rebecca, I want to end on this. This death conversation is powerful. And I know it's not a matter of if we die, it's when. And, we've been given the gift of having to wrestle with that just a little bit more intensely than others. When it is time to go, whenever it is, and hopefully it's not for a very, very long time for both of us, right? What do you want to be remembered by with your work, with what you're doing?
I think I struggle a lot with people losing their voice and their ability to tell their own story. And sometimes that is a very literal thing that happens to people with brain cancer. And sometimes it's just because their caregiver becomes their voice for them. And that's okay if that's something that people decide on. But for me, I just wanted to be able to tell my own story, live my own life the way I want to live it for as long as possible, no matter how long that is. So I hope that I am a person who has given hope and a person who encourages you to, choose your own adventure and own it and be yourself as long as you get to be here.
Beautiful. And you've been an incredible example of that within yourself. And so I really admire you. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your journey. I've learned a lot from you. The first time I heard about CGAT was from a podcast you were on, I don't know how long ago. And that encouraged me to look up that whole process. And now I'm signed up to do it. So, you definitely have already made an impact on my life. And I appreciate you for coming on. And my last kind of piece is if someone's listening to this and they need support, I know you have a lot of resources on your website. How can someone get in touch with you if they want to go more in your resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty active on social media, that Brainy Blonde. And my website's just RebeccaDevine.com. And I have tons of resources on there. You can DM me if you're getting lost. And I do everything myself. Like I do my own podcast. I do my own editing, which you'll know if you listen. My own website, my own social media. It's all just me on the side. I run a business. I have 4 kids. I have a lot going on. But I really want to do this for people. I want to get it out there the best I can. But if it's not super easy to use, just DM me and I'll get you on track. And it feels important to help people navigate this.
Well, Rebecca, you're inspiring. I appreciate you coming on and just wishing both of us the best on our glioblastoma journey.
Yeah, I'm wishing you the best too. I'm really happy to meet you.
Thanks.